These days, everybody's using the word apocalypse. And here to talk with us about that word today is author and lecturer Bill Salus. Bill, welcome to Prophecy Watcher.
Well, it's great to be here. And we were just talking about the actual meaning of apocalypse, and I was fascinated by how you phrased that to me. Why don't you tell the viewers what that is?
It's really interesting that the secular world uses that word in a movie title, for example, book titles, thrillers, television specials, and it always means something horrible, like a bomb dropped on Los Angeles, maybe an atomic type bomb or something. And then the movie starts. But Bill, that word is a biblical word. Mm-hmm. It's the title of the last book of the Bible, Apocalypse. We call it Revelation, and the word means to reveal, and specifically it's to reveal the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yes.
So it's a biblical word. And having said that, let's get into, to use that word again, your book, which is called Apocalypse Road. Bill's been working on these ideas for a long time, book, DVD, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But let's begin to talk about your book and the thesis of the book.
Yes. Well, the thesis is dealing with that vastly overlooked time period that happens after the rapture, but before the tribulation. I call it the post-rapture, pre-tribulation gap, and I've written a thesis on it. You know, the common teaching for many years was, listen, you have a rapture, and then you have a 7 years of tribulation.
Right.
That was the traditional timeline, and after that you have the 1,000-year millennium. But we realize it's not the rapture that starts this tribulation period, it's the confirmation of a false covenant. Now, in prior shows we've done, we've actually spent a lot of time exploring the prophecies in the gap, how maybe the first 5 sealed judgments might actually even fit in there. We just did an update on that. It's on your website. But what we're going to do in this show, I'm excited we'll do this conversation, is we're going to talk about that false covenant. That actually, what sets the stage for Israel to want to be involved in that false covenant? What motivates Israel? Who's the other party involved with Israel? What's the role of the Antichrist in this covenant? And ultimately, what is that true content on that covenant? There's a lot of different theories. Is that peace between the Arabs and the Jews and that sort of thing?
And let me just pick up my Bible here and look at Daniel 9. And by the way, Daniel 9, 24 through 27 is said by many to be one of the very key prophecies in the whole Bible. It just lays out the whole thing. The 70 weeks prophecy. And in 9:27 it says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And I'll just read that phrase because we have he here. Everybody agrees that's the Antichrist.
Correct.
He will confirm or augment a covenant for 1 week, which is a Shavua, which is a 7-year period. And there you have the 7 years tribulation. But you've discovered a lot more in it than most people, I think, bring out.
Yeah, well, when most people teach on the false covenant, that is the main proof text they go to, and we get some really important details in there. It says he confirms, the Antichrist is a confirmer of the covenant, not necessarily he's a party of it or the drafter of it. We don't know that, but he just confirms it with Israel and some other party. They call it the many. It's for 7 years, like you said, and in the middle of it, he violates it. He goes into the Jewish temple and stops the sacrifice and offerings. But we have more proof text on that. Matter of fact, you might want to read the other proof text on it written a century prior by Isaiah in chapter 28, Isaiah 28, verse 15, which talks about Israel's motivation, who the other party is, and that it's done in lies and falsehood.
And I'm going to do that right now, Isaiah 28:15. Which, by the way, let me start with 14 because that builds the drama, if you will. Wherefore, hear the word of the Lord, ye scornful men that rule this people which is Jerusalem. Because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us. For we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood we have hid ourselves. Woo, strong words.
Yeah, what Isaiah is doing for us here enhancing our full understanding, a different camera angle on this false covenant.
Yeah.
So he's putting a face on the other signatory, the other party. I call him the signatory. Israel's one, death in Hades. Death in Sheol. You just read the translations use the word hell. A lot of the translations use the Hebrew word Sheol for the same
I'm
thing.
reading the King James, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so, they sound intangible, but the reality is we can actually put a face on them, and we're going to make a connection in this show with death in Hades, the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. So Israel is signing a covenant with death in Sheol to avoid some overflowing scourge that's sweeping through the earth, being perpetrated by death in Sheol. That's why they covenant with them. And it's done in lies and falsehood. It is a false covenant. And what I believe is being said there is that Israel knows what they're signing on for it's politically expedient, and we'll explain why when we understand the true content of that false covenant. One important point, though, what you read, and I'm glad you read the prior verse 14.
Yeah.
God's calling them scornful rulers. If you read all of Isaiah 28, they have missed it. They haven't understood the Word of God as precept upon precept, line upon line, and stuff like that. And now they're taking the Jewish nation down the wrong path, is really what he's saying there. They're scornful rulers, and it's very fascinating. But that's important information, that Isaiah 28, verse 15.
Now, let's talk about the signing of the covenant, because when you talk about the 7-year false covenant, naturally we're talking about the Antichrist being a signatory, but you're saying it's not just the Antichrist alone. Who are the signatories, the covenant? This is a very important part of your thesis.
Yeah, so for instance, a confirmer of a covenant, we'll use examples in modern history. Jimmy Carter was a confirmer of a covenant in 1979 between Egypt and Israel. Bill Clinton was a confirmer of a covenant between Israel and Jordan in 1994, I believe it was. An Antichrist is someone that's going to be trusted by Israel to confirm a covenant, and death in Sheol, who represents death in Hades, and we'll get into that face in just a moment. They're going to be trusted by these parties to confirm this covenant. So basically what you've got is the party is Israel, the confirmer is the Antichrist, and then the other party is death in Sheol. And so now we've got the details of who's involved and what the motivation is.
Now, we're going to talk about who's involved, and right now, as we talk, I'm going to turn my Bible back to the Apocalypse. That is the book of Revelation. And again, what we're talking about here is a period of time between the rapture of the church and the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. And Bill has worked long and hard to try to fill in the blanks, if you will. 20, 30 years ago, it was very common, and I'm going to reiterate this for a reason, it's very common for people to have no gap at all. Just the rapture occurs, and then the very next day, you got the 7-year tribulation going. Well, a moment's thought just demolishes that idea. Much has to happen before that covenant can be confirmed. So let's go with that.
Yeah, because what's happening is that Israel doesn't just randomly say, let's sign some devastating covenant that triggers the final 7-year time clock. Something is happening, sweeping through the world. Isaiah says it's an overflowing scourge that has got Israel concerned about its security, and they feel that the way they can avoid this escape it is to sign this covenant. And so it's a very critical bit of information that we look at here.
So the overflowing scourge, what is that? How should we address that idea?
Well, as we try to put a face on death in Hades, death in Sheol, we have a correlation that shows up in the book of the Apocalypse in Revelation chapter 6 of the fourth horseman. And matter of fact, why don't you read the Revelation 6 about the fourth horseman? And I believe that we're going to find out that is actually the harlot world religion. The sequence of events, just real quickly as you get ready to read it. The churches, we believe, is already raptured in heaven when the seal judgments are open, and the Antichrist comes on the scene as the white horseman, the first seal. The fiery red horseman is wars, peace is taken from the earth. That creates scarcities, famines, and pestilences. That's the black horseman, a very dark time of the earth. And then now to deal with the whole situation, you've got this unholy global order with the church and state relationship of the Antichrist and the harlot going on to deal with that sort of thing. Now remember, this is a time when lawlessness and supernatural deception, things like this, are no longer being restrained So it's a really bizarre point in time. So I'm just trying to lay the groundwork of what the
Yeah.
world looks like at this time, and then here comes this death in Hades.
And I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking back, and I'm thinking, okay, we have the white horse Antichrist, we have the red horse war. And at that point, I'm thinking, wow, the Old Testament speaks, for example, Ezekiel 38 and Psalm 83, and all these Middle Eastern wars. Zechariah talks about wars, and all the minor prophets. None of those wars have happened yet. The red horse has not ridden forth yet.
Yeah, and I believe that I believe Psalm 83, for instance, and Ezekiel 38 are pre-tribulation events, and if they haven't happened by the time the fiery red horseman enters onto the scene, they would more than likely be put into that category right there, where they're involved with those wars that are sweeping through the earth.
And that's an important thing to remember based on your thesis. And then you have the third seal, of course, the things that accompany war, the black horse, which is total economic collapse, chaos. And now comes the fourth seal, verses 7 and 8 of Revelation 6. And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell, or Hades, followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. And that's a mouthful. There's a lot going on there.
Right, and so I've said previously stated that Isaiah 28 talked about the other party being death and hell, or death and Sheol. And now we're talking about here they arrive on the scene. They don't even arrive on the scene till the fourth horseman. And basically it's the same words, death and Hades in the Greek.
Same words that Isaiah used in Isaiah 28.
Yeah, and so dear viewer, you might be going, oh, so you're now saying that death, the fourth horseman, is the other party on the false covenant, and I am. And you may be thinking, well, what a stretch that is, right? But I tell you, I go through this meticulously in the research in the Apocalypse Road book and DVD. So presuming I'm correct, dear viewer, let's pick it up from here. They now show up on the scene, and it says they have authority, you read, over a quarter of the earth to kill. It doesn't necessarily say they're killing a quarter of the earth, which has been commonly taught. It says they have authority over a quarter of the earth. It's a vast network to accomplish their means. In other words, to promote their agenda, to promote their false gospel. It's religious, because death and Hades are dealing with the soul. Hades is dealing with the souls of men and women. So we've got a situation now that tells me that now we've got the Antichrist on the scene, the first horseman. Israel is already in the scene, as we know. They're one of the signatories. Now we've got the other signatory, so you really probably couldn't even have the false covenant signed until you get the scourge being perpetrated by death and Hades, the fourth horseman.
Right.
So now you can have the false covenant signed. But technically we got another problem, because the fifth seal, Gary, if you want to read that, is dealing with another clue that we haven't probably even entered the tribulation yet by what these fifth seal saints are asking God.
Yeah, and I want to say this clearly. And Bill is saying that the four horsemen of the apocalypse occur prior to the 7-year tribulation.
I believe the opening of the seals all the way through the fifth seal happen in this vastly overlooked gap period we're talking about on this show. I believe they carry over into the tribulation, but the point of difference between many of our colleagues is that they believe all the seal judgments happen in the tribulation, usually in the first half. And I'm saying I don't think that's feasibly sound when we look at it this way and dissect it this way.
Okay, so we come to the fifth seal now. And this is quite different from the first four seals. It says, and when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God, for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And that's the big question, how long, O Lord? And why do they ask that?
Isn't that interesting? Right.
Yeah.
We've talked about this in the past, Gary. If let's just presume we were among the fifth seal saints, and of course we believe we'll be raptured, and this is happening subsequent.
Right.
But we would be astute to say, hey, listen, the false covenant has just been confirmed between Israel and, well, in this case, we're going to say the harlot world religion. And we're going to say, hey, we can start calendaring. We got 7 years left. We would not need to ask God, how long until you're going to avenge our blood? These are people who have accepted the Lord in the gap. The rapture's already happened. Yeah. And they've died for their faith.
So let me put a question. From your perspective, are they saying, how long is it going to be until you begin your work in the 7-year period? They're saying that in effect that the 7 years hasn't begun yet.
I believe that's exactly what they're saying. As a matter of fact, if you read God's response to them, read the final verses there. I think it's verse 10 and 11 there.
Yeah, verse
Look
11.
look what God says to them, and I think this breaks it down for us.
And the next verse says, white robes were given unto every one of them. It was said to them they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. So there's yet a little time here, a little season.
Well, this is an interesting response.
It is.
They get white garments, which represents they're saved, and so it's clear that these are saved individuals. They have already been slain for their faith. But they have not been slain during the tribulation period. They're concerned for their other family members or whatever that might be slain by the same, and it's going to be the harlot, and I'll explain why in a moment. They're concerned about that, how much longer this perilous stuff is going to continue, and the Bible says 3 important things. You need to rest a little while longer because there's 3 groups of martyred believers after the rapture. Mm-hmm. One is the fifth seal saints. They die in the gap period between the rapture and the tribulation. He says your fellow servants who will die in the first, I believe this saying in the first half of the tribulation, also dying for their faith, and their brethren of the fellow servants, who I believe are the saints who actually die, get beheaded for not taking the mark of the beast in the second half of the tribulation, because you have 2 killing campaigns going on in the book of Revelation after the rapture. You have the harlot world religion. In Revelation 17:6, it says she is drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. And I think the Jews are concerned about that overflowing scourge. They don't want to be the third victim and the blood of the Jews. Mm-hmm. That's why they sign a covenant with the harlot. And then you have the Antichrist. The 10 kings and the Antichrist from Revelation 17:16 will have the harlot desolated. She will be a problem. And the Antichrist will then come in and want to put forward his campaign of world dominance. And we go to Revelation 13, and it says that people who don't take his mark on their hand or on their right hand or their forehead will be killed. Revelation 20 says they're actually beheaded. So you got 2 killing crusades, killing jihads, if you will. I guess that's more of an Islamic term. I want to be careful because I don't believe this is Islam. But you got 2 killing crusades going on in the book of Revelation, killing the fifth seal saints, their fellow servants.
I'll take you back
brethren.
there. You said you didn't believe it was Islam because you believe that by this time there have been some wars that have pretty much wiped out the Islamic forces.
Well, maybe that was a slip that would be good to segue into this right now, because there is people who do believe the Antichrist will be Islamic and that the harlot will be Islam and basically centered out of Mecca. A couple things on that. First of all, I do believe Psalm 83, which is 10 populations that are predominantly Muslim, and Ezekiel 38, which is 9 populations predominantly Muslim, apart from Russia, will have been defeated by this time. And now that would represent about 600 million Muslims affected out of the 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. And at that point in time, they're going to be questioning Allah's Akbar, Allah's greatness. And this is sort of the core countries where Islam was founded and stuff like that. So there's many reasons why I would deviate from the thinking that this is Islam and stuff like that. I personally propose through sound research that this is real clear in the book of Revelation chapter 17. I gave my arguments for that. And so basically, this is who Israel's signing a covenant with. It's in my estimation. And then we get into the motivation and the true content of the false covenant. We will start to understand why these are the 2 parties, which is revolutionary because no one's really, in my estimation, talked about the harlot being the other party. When you look at the true content of the false covenant, you see that Israel is having to negotiate for their 3rd temple with Gentiles in Revelation chapter 11. Matter of fact, if you go to Revelation chapter 11, the first clue we have in what is the true content of the false covenant, our first clue of the first half of the tribulation in the book of Revelation, after the covenant is confirmed and the tribulation starts, we go to Revelation 11, and it's John running around measuring for the temple, which tells me as a clue that part of the true content of the false covenant is the Jews want to build their temple. And why do they want to build their temple? Because when they build their temple, they believe the Messiah will come, and he will lead them into the Messianic kingdom, which is a high point of Old Testament prophecy. And there's a problem because there's an overflowing scourge going on, another false gospel out there. The fifth seal saints aren't buying into it, and they're losing their life for it. The Jews aren't going to buy into it because they're going to feel empowered. They're going to want to build their temple. They're going to want to bring their Messiah. They're going to want to start their sacrifices and offerings. But there's a problem with Revelation 11 because it says now the Jews have to negotiate with the Gentiles. It says you can measure the temple, but don't measure the outer court. It's going to be given to the Gentiles in Revelation 11. And they will trodden the holy city of Jerusalem for 3.5 years. First time the Jews have ever had to negotiate with Gentiles to build a temple. That's because right now in the old city of Jerusalem, you got 4 quarters: the Jewish, the Armenian, the Christian, and the Muslim quarters. After Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38, the Muslim quarter is probably not going to be a big deal. After the rapture, the Christian and Armenian quarters will probably not be a big deal. I think what's going to happen, because a lot of those Christians will be taken out.
And what you're really talking about is the woman, the harlot on the beast, representing a harlot world religion.
Right.
And you defined that as you go into your book. And again, I have to say that if you haven't heard this thesis advanced, you might want to be patient as Bill takes time to expound on this.
It's so complex, and in a half-hour show we can only do so much. But the point is, Israel signs a covenant. It enables them to build their temple. We've got proof texts in Isaiah 28. Also, we've got Daniel 9 also has a proof text too, right, because that they got their temple there, and the Antichrist goes in and stops the sacrifices and the offerings. So we've got to look at, I think that has a lot to do with the content of the false covenant. A lot of people think it's peace between the Palestinians and the Jews, but it's not in this Bible that it says it's between the Arabs and the Jews. There's clues saying it's dealing with that temple.
So let's go back and reiterate now. We just have a very few minutes here to kind of backspace to where we started. The rapture hasn't occurred yet, and when it does, that's going to open the floodgates for a number of subsequent events, and go through those again the way you did before.
Yeah, you're going to have the first thing Satan does now, because there's no more restraint on him, according to 2 Thessalonians 2. It'll be a time when supernatural signs and wonders are going to come out. Lawlessness will abound. The lawless one will be revealed. And so the first thing he does in his opportunity to present his closing arguments, he brings his point man, the white horseman, the Antichrist, on the scene. Lawlessness then is abounding, and so it leads to wars in Revelation with the second horseman. Yeah. It then leads to scarcities and famines and troubles throughout the world, which needs to be harnessed. And that's when you have a global system, the harlot world religion, coming in as death and hell and Hades. And she is now perpetrating an overflowing scourge, and one of the victims of that is the fifth seal saints, because they're not buying into her counterfeit gospel. So then you have Israel saying, we're not buying into it either. We need to sign a covenant with them, but we have to negotiate with them because they have claims on Jerusalem, and so we want to build our temple, but we have to deal with their claims. And so this is where they come. And so the Jews are wanting to build their temple, because when they build their temple, the Messiah will come. He will lead them into the kingdom, and he will do away with the overflowing scourge and the falsities of the harlot world religion. That will be their mindset. And that's why Isaiah 28:15 says they will make this covenant under lies and falsehood. It'll be politically expedient for them to covenant with her so that they can bring their Messiah, and he'll toast that whole problem over there.
Now, I think you've given us more than enough to chew on at this point. We have listened attentively. And by the way, you've devoted a lot of thought to this, which, by the way, contains many more details than we can bring you in a less than 30-minute broadcast. I just want to mention the book is called Apocalypse Road, the DVD, the same title. But first, I want to talk about, we have on the table in front of me, we have 4 books and 4 DVDs. That represents your complete work.
It does.
And we have these for folks right here at Prophecy Watchers. And what I'm going to do today is something I don't think we've ever done anything like this before, but we're going to offer you the complete Bill Salus collection. 4 books, 4 DVDs, and you'll find those in the online bookstore, prophecywatchers.com. Just hit the online bookstore button, scroll down to Bill Salus, and you'll find the complete Bill Salus collection. You buy 4 books, 4 DVDs, and you get Bill's latest work absolutely free as a bonus. and you're going to save about $100 in the process of this purchase. And what it'll do is give you a long view of what Bill has been working on now for how many years?
Well, I've been working on this for about 15 years overall.
And he's devoted a tremendous amount of thought to very complex ideas. And I think you'll really get a lot out of following his work. Again, Apocalypse Road, the book, the DVD, yours absolutely free. When you purchase the Bill Salus collection, you'll save about $100 in total purchase price there. And you'll be helping Bill to move his ideas forward. You'll be helping us at Prophecy Watchers to move these ideas out into the general public, because what we are involved in here is evangelism. We feel the study of Bible prophecy is one of the best ways to bring people to Christ, right?
Right, and the point is with all of these works is it's going to compel people to be called to evangelism now, because what we're talking about is a perilous period of time, not even in the tribulation yet, in the gap. And, you don't want your loved ones to have to go through that period of time. So now is the time to redeem the time and to witness to them. And it's exactly the main goal of what these works are.
The rapture of the church, in my opinion, and I think you would agree with this, could occur at any moment. It is a signless event. It is an imminent event. It is our blessed hope. And we've got to work like everything, because the opposing ideas are out there. The world, I think you've probably noticed, is getting darker and darker. And we want to bring the light of the love of the Lord Jesus Christ and his gospel to as many people as possible before that day comes when the church is taken out. And we're looking forward to that, Bill, but we really want to make sure that a lot of people go with us, right?
Absolutely. And also the works of Apocalypse Road will give an alternative view for people who are debating whether there's a mid-trib or a pre-wrath rapture, because this explains how this fits instead of that.
The Bill Salus collection, and by the way, purchase that and get his latest work absolutely free, the book, the DVD. And I got to tell you, Bill challenges traditional thinking, and it's not something that he's just kind of come up with overnight. He's worked long and hard to develop this thesis, and we do appreciate what you're doing. I have long thought that there has to be some kind of a staging period after the church leaves and before the tribulation. And you've come along and put a lot of detail in there.
Yeah, and I think the evidence is pretty clear as I presented in these books that is not going to be a 24-hour window. There is going to be probably several years there. And in a split second with the rapture, now these people get left behind and get plunged into this perilous period. And we're not even talking about the tribulation.
It's been an interesting conversation. Bill Salus, God bless you and yours and your continuing work.
Thanks.
And we're going to see you October 13th through 15th at the Blessed Hope Prophecy Conference, and you're going to be presenting there some of your work, right?
Absolutely. I am so looking forward to that.
I am too. I'm Gary Stearman. Thanks for joining us today. Keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.